I know everyone wants to make a quarterback change, but it was actually a good thing Joe Flacco was starting for the Browns on Sunday. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. It's a good thing Kevin Stefanski stuck with Joe Flacco in week 3. The Browns' offensive line issues are unlikely to get better anytime soon after a brutal injury update that we got on Monday. Plus, why Andre Schmidt's game-winning kick meant more to him than anyone even realized. I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And listen, I get it. Everyone's talking about quarterback change. I understand why we're all there. Joe Flacco's passer rating at this stage of the season, 3 games in, is 38.2. It is one of the worst in football. Only players worse are Tua, Russell Wilson, Cam Ward, and J.J. McCarthy. And so, yes, there's a lot of bad that has come from Joe Flacco starting right now. This offense is very bad right now. There's a lot of reasons for that, as I explained on our post-game show on Sunday. And we'll get into that a little bit more here coming up as well. But there's at least one reason that I can find after going back and watching the game over again of why it was beneficial that the Browns actually were starting Joe Flacco yesterday. And it all kind of comes down really to just one singular moment, which I know people are going to be like, well, that's the thing you're pointing to. I get it. But listen, hear me out. Because that end of the game sequence where you block the field goal, you're set up at your own 47, penalty from Micah Parsons. So now you're pushed into Packers territory with 21 seconds. You're trying to find time to set up for a field goal. You run an out route to Jamari Thrash for 3 yards. That gets you up to the 45-yard line. Incomplete to Jerry Jeudy with 17 seconds to go. Now you have 12 seconds left. And it's 3rd down and 2. You're trying to get a little closer, inch yourself into field goal range because 45 still probably a little bit too long, especially considering that before the half, Kevin Stefanski wasn't willing to try a 60-yard attempt to try to tie the game at 3. And so that would have put you at like 58-ish, 59-ish, not exactly the range that you really wanted to be put in. And so he opted for, or actually it would have put you at like that same range. It would have been like 61, 62, I should say. And so he tries to run one more play with 12 seconds left. It's the quick pass to Njoku over the middle, gets everybody up without any timeouts to spike the ball and stop the clock. They all get set. Time stops, 2 seconds left, and he kicks the field goal to win the game from 55 yards. And that is a sequence that takes a lot of repetition and a lot of experience and a lot of just a great football IQ and just the calm nerves, not panicking in that moment. All those things come into play in a situation like that. And Flacco is the perfect quarterback to execute something like that. I don't know if Dylan Gabriel, I understand that he is basically a robot the same way the way Kevin Stefanski likes his players, at least when he talks to us in press conferences and all those different things, he comes off that way. But I don't know that a rookie executes that as flawlessly as Joe Flacco did. And Kevin Stefanski said after the game on Sunday that essentially 12 seconds that they had left when they ran that final play to Njoku is right on the fringe of how much time they preferably want to be able to execute that perfectly, to execute a play, get yourself set, spike the ball, stop the clock, and then set up for the game-winning field goal. He said 12 seconds is right on the edge of how much time they would try something like that. They preferably want like 15 seconds. They didn't have it, but they executed it flawlessly. They got the job done, and I think you do have to give some credit to Joe Flacco in this instance for being the right quarterback for that situation particularly to win that game. Maybe Dylan Gabriel gives you more throughout the game and it wouldn't have mattered because you maybe could have won that game by scoring more points. I get it. But in that situation specifically, how the game sort of played out, handling your nerves in a crunch time situation like that, you couldn't have asked for a better quarterback to be out there for that moment. And so Flacco delivered, and the Browns get their first win because of it. And there's no guarantee that either rookie would have necessarily been able to handle that situation the same way. I think in that respect, it was the right decision to start Flacco because there's just a trust there. And that's the other thing too, is like, I understand why there is so much noise around the idea of moving on from Flacco and giving Dillon Gabriel a try and the offense trying to have to breathe some life into the offense. I get why all those things are discussed. I get that they should be discussed. 100% they should be discussed. But at the same time, the season is not yet over for this Browns team yet. And frankly, if they had won week 1 and they were 1-1 after that Ravens loss, I don't know that the conversations would have been quite as loud. I'm not saying the offense couldn't have been better after even though that first week if Andre Schmidt had made his field goal in that first game and they won. But I think like you talk about 2-1 football team at this point. I don't know that like warrants a massive change at quarterback, especially as they're trying to sell this locker room on. We're trying to be competitive. They said everyone was convinced that Joe Flacco was going to give them the best chance to win. So I think they're trying to see it through right now. Again, I know that a quarterback change is inevitable. I know that it's coming at some point. And some of the conversation or some of the points, or rather some of the arguments on why Gabriel gives you a better shot makes a ton of sense. Joe Flacco is a statue back there right now. He can't move. He's 40 years old. He looks very much like a 40-year-old quarterback who can't really do much in the pocket. And so, yes, like Dillon Gabriel gives you some mobility. He gives you some athleticism that Joe Flacco just simply does not have. There's a benefit to that helps the offense in potentially to be able to do a little bit more and maybe make some more plays downfield and not just feel like your quarterback's a sitting duck who can't move and do anything. So I get that there's a benefit there. And so I see all the arguments why. I'm not saying that they shouldn't make a change sooner rather than later. I'm not saying that change isn't coming because, frankly, it is coming. It is going to happen at some point here in the near future. And, none of us will be surprised when it does because at some point the offense is just going to be so bad that they have to concede, okay, we're making a change. But the problem is once you make that change, you kind of wave the white flag on the season. I don't think they're ready to do that right now with this veteran group that they have. Because then if you start a rookie, you're especially one that you just said, 3 weeks ago wasn't ready to be the number one guy. If you start a rookie, you're kind of telling everybody, okay, the goal for the season has changed. Now we want to evaluate these guys. And I don't think they're ready to do that just yet. And so I do think the silver lining too, as bad as things have been for this offense and as bad as Joe Flacco has looked, and they got to find a way to breathe some life into this thing. Hopefully that comes in the form of Quinshon Judkins and relying on the run game a little bit more because he was brilliant yesterday. And everything I said about him pre-draft and all that and believing that he was the right fit for this Browns team looked like it was true in that game. If they can lean on that a little bit more, they were very balanced yesterday. You didn't see Joe Flacco having to throw the ball 45 plus times. He threw the ball 36 times. That's more of what you want from this offense. He's got to be able to make more plays and more completions. That Packers defense is really good. But if you can get that run game going and that becomes your identity, maybe that's the thing that adds another element to this offense and gets it getting to a different gear. That's the hope. And then maybe you can, keep Flacco out there a little bit longer. But yes, like at some point there's going to be a change. But I understand why like things are they've kept things where they're at right now. And in this instance in particular, I think it actually it served the Browns well because when things got tight at the end, when you needed to make a play, when you needed to execute something that the team practices, Kevin Stefanski talked about this on Monday. They practice that on Fridays, that situational stuff where they go out, get up, run a play like that, get the ball spiked, and then line up for the field goal. And then they also sort of try it and practice it in their walkthrough on Saturday. When you needed a quarterback to make that play, Flacco is the perfect guy to do it because you knew at the moment wasn't going to be too much for him. He executed it perfectly. And now you have the Browns on the board with their first one of the season because of it. So in that respect, starting Flacco ended up being the right move. If you're hoping that the Browns offensive line, because that's one of the bigger issues on offense right now, and why I don't know if any quarterback could be successful in this offense right now. If you think that those things were going to get better and the offensive line was going to start playing better as the season progressed, well, think again, because the hits just keep on coming to this group. A key injury to Dawand Jones that ends his season. What does it mean for the offensive line moving forward? We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly, one of my favorite ways to follow along with football. I love checking projections like Josh Allen, more or less than 270 yards passing, or Saquon Barkley, more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. And this year, they're offering max discounts, which give you opportunities to cash out. For example, on Sunday, they had a max discount for Patrick Mahomes, 0.5 passing yards. That was an easy play. You just say more, and you would have set yourself up to potentially win big this past week. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's going to be right. So Kevin Stefanski dropped the unfortunate news on us on Monday that Dawand Jones is done for the season. His season is over. The knee injury that he suffered in the first quarter proved to be a costly one, as it was, I believe, Javon Bullard, who was coming in on the play from the nickel spot to try and blow up like a screen pass to David Njoku, and came in low, dove around the knees. It looked like at least it was going to be a hyperextension or worse for Dawand Jones, and then we get the update that it is worse. So for the third straight season, Dawand Jones has his season, his first 3 years in the league, all cut short by season-ending injuries. And it's an unfortunate development for a guy that the Browns were hoping would sort of turn into a future asset along the offensive line for them. They tried him out at left tackle this year. I think yesterday it was a testament to the fact that that experiment had basically failed, because they moved him back to the right side and put Cornelius Lucas at left tackle while they're still working on getting Jack Conklin back because of the elbow injury. And so it's another offensive lineman loss from a group that was already pretty shorthanded in general. And it's an unfortunate update for Dawand, because this probably means the Browns, I've talked about it already, but as much as we're all thinking big picture quarterback next year in the draft, right? We got to remember this offensive line, it's setting up right now to look completely different next year. Joe Bitonio might retire. Jack Conklin, Ethan Posick, and Wyatt Teller are all in the last years of their deal. Cornelius Lucas is on a 1-year deal. Like, this could be an entirely new group playing in front of potentially a rookie quarterback, or potentially one of the rookies from this year at quarterback behind them. Like, that's going to be one of the biggest needs. Revamping this offensive line is going to be one of the biggest needs this offseason. And I think that's playing out in real time too, because they've been bad. Miscommunications left and right, guys not understanding their assignments, letting guys just run through the line unblocked and getting to the quarterback. I understand Joe Flacco's been bad, but he hasn't had a lot of help up front either. And it's why I said yesterday, I don't know that a quarterback change just fixes everything, because I think any of these quarterbacks would struggle behind this offensive line right now, the way that they're playing. But keeping in mind that, like, this group's going to look a lot different next year, I think the hope was that Dawand Jones could be part of the future plan. Whether it was, yes, he works out at left tackle, we can start him there, or, you know what, he's more of our right tackle, Jack Conklin's gone, let's put Dawand there. I think that was what the Browns were at least hoping to figure out in some capacity this year. And now that goes out the window. He's probably still going to be here next year. He's on a rookie deal. He's super cheap as a 4th-round pick. But can you count on him at this point to be part of their long-term plans on the offensive line? Probably not. And that's obviously disappointing and concerning and unfortunate, but it's the truth of the situation. You know, he just hasn't been able to stay on the field and stay healthy. And that's why the Browns have so many questions up front, and that's going to continue, obviously, this week, where they're still sorting through these things. Jack Conklin, Kevin Stefanski shared, is day-to-day, so still no update on him in terms of if he's going to be back this week. But it's another guy who, yeah, they paid at one point. When they brought Jack Conklin in, he was one of the best, tackles in this game. It was a good signing, and injuries have kind of played the later stages of his time here in Cleveland, and they can't count on him to stay healthy. And so what this means is that you can anticipate a lot more of Cornelius Lucas and a lot more as well of KT Leviston playing the tackle spots for this Browns team throughout the rest of the season. And that's not good because those two guys have been awful in particular for this Browns offensive line. When Lucas was on the right side, he was making a ton of mistakes. There was a lot of miscommunication issues. Leviston yesterday, I can remember at least one play specifically. I think it was the Rashawn Gary sack where he just completely just didn't block anybody. David Njoku chipped the end, and Rashawn Gary was right there, and he just kind of stepped to his right, led him right through the hole, and Joe Flacco gets sacked because of it. Like it's been bad at those tackle spots in particular, and the inconsistencies aren't going to get any better because it's going to continue, it seems, to be this rotation of players, these different players that are going to be trying to play different spots, and they just can't stay healthy. And I understand like injuries are part of the game. The amount of injuries this team has dealt with up front over the last couple of years is kind of remarkable, honestly. And you know, they had some of that in 2023 too, and were able to kind of combat it and survive it somehow. This year that hasn't been the case. It's already becoming a problem. And I liked the additions they made this offseason. I liked Tevin Jenkins. I liked Cornelius Lucas based on the tape that I saw from him in Washington last year as a swing tackle. I thought he held his own. I thought he was pretty good. But he's been bad through these first couple games. It has not been what I saw on tape last year in Washington. And, you know, you're running out of bodies that you can really depend on this offensive line in general and at those tackle spots in particular, which are the, you know, two of the key spots, obviously, of this group. So problems persist there. If you were hoping it was going to get better, there's no signs of that. The one saving grace, again, is that maybe, just maybe, they found something in the run game yesterday that can be their strength, and that this offensive line can do enough to create holes for Judkins, who I've said before is kind of one of those eraser talents. And what I mean by that is he erases sometimes the mistakes. Like if a guy misses a block, sometimes he can make a guy miss, find a different hole, find a different route, and then break off a 5 or 6 yard run that was going to be nothing and turn, you know, a blown up play into a few yards at least. He is that type of back. He can take a small hole and turn it into 38 yards like we saw yesterday, or 14 yards like we saw yesterday. He can make those types of plays. And so he maybe bails out this offensive line a little bit, the same way Nick Chubb, I think, probably masks some of the issues that the offensive line or misses that the offensive line could have had at times during the peak of his powers. And so the hope is that Quinshon can provide a similar sort of presence and be that guy for this team and give this run game a real spark moving forward. And that maybe that alleviates some of the pressure on the O-line, especially in pass protection. Because in pass protection, I feel like it's been worse than run blocking for this group in terms of protecting Joe Flacco in the quarterback position. So I'll lean on the fact that maybe Quinshon makes things better for everybody. But man, like this offensive line is a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. And I don't know if there's an end in sight because with the Dawand Jones injury, you just don't have a lot of bodies left in this room. And it's bodies, frankly, that we're already seeing you can't really count on consistently game in and game out like Cornelius Lucas and KT Leviston. And the sooner Jack Conklin gets back, the better. But again, with all the injuries he's had in his career, is there a guarantee he makes it to the end of the season? He played one game and then missed the last two because of an elbow injury. Can't bank on that either. It's just kind of a disaster in that room right now, and there's no end in sight for it, unfortunately. Why Andre Schmidt's game-winning field goal is an even better story than we all realize. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game. It's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is, I just talked about him, Andre Schmidt and his 55-yard game-winning field goal to beat the Packers. Also he missed 2 kicks in week 1 that cost the Browns a win. And then he was set up for a 55-yarder in crunch time, 2 seconds left against Green Bay, and delivered to fulfill an incredible redemption story and lift the Browns to their first victory of the season. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like how there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff each week with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You heard that correctly. $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following the NFL season with FanDuel. The best part is they have options for however you want to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person. You want to bet on a player eclipsing a certain benchmark in a game. Or maybe you want to combine that benchmark with a few other props and maybe even a money line to build a same game parlay. Or you can just jump on the money line in real time as the action unfolds. The options are endless, and it makes the game, every game, whether it's your team playing or not, even more exciting. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so I talked a ton yesterday about Andre Schmidt's game-winning kick and how remarkable it was, how the amazing redemption story that it sort of provided us here in the early going of this Browns season. And I said, like, that's why we love sports. It's why we love following football, because it's stories like that. Guy makes a mistake that costs you a game, and then a couple weeks later, he gets a chance to redeem himself and delivers and wins you a game. Like, that stuff's so cool. It's why we love these we get so attached to sports, frankly, because it's an emotional thing in those respects. And it produces some really cool stories. And what's interesting with Andre Schmidt is that his story in particular was even more emotional yesterday with the game-winning kick than we thought. He shared after the game a pretty emotional story about how he lost his mom this summer in July due to a brain aneurysm, and how, it's left him, rattled, rightfully so, because it's been an emotional roller coaster and dealing and processing that over the last several months. And how she was his biggest fan, and that yesterday was one of those moments that he wishes she was still there for, just to share with her and experience that with her. His family's been well represented at the games, he said. Like, his dad's been at every game. I think he had one of his sisters with his dad in attendance yesterday as well, so that's kind of cool. And clearly they're sort of like getting through this together. But what makes it even more like meaningful is that, he talked about how it was a special kick for him, but that he felt his mom's presence spiritually, like, with him, watching over, seeing the kick go in. He knows that she's looking down, happy and excited about the fact that he delivered in that moment and produced the win for Cleveland as a rookie in this league at 27, a late bloomer, if you will, and in terms of being a rookie. But it was just an incredible story. I was moved listening to him share it because it was pretty remarkable. And, these are the things that make sports amazing. It also, I thought it was also fascinating. Like, he opened up so much about this, and he talked about how the loss of his mother and dealing with all that has allowed him to keep things in perspective. And listen, life in the NFL as a kicker is not easy. He saw that firsthand, week 1 to week 2 to now, where you miss a couple kicks in your debut and everyone's ready to kick you to the curb. And I admitted it yesterday. I was somebody who's sitting here saying they needed to bring in kickers. They needed to try somebody different. Maybe they made the wrong call on cutting Dustin Hopkins. I was banging that drum. I was there. But the Browns stood by him. They had confidence in him. They gave him another shot. He was perfect last week against the Ravens, and then he's perfect against the Packers on Sunday, and provides the moment of the game with the game-winning field goal as time expired, a walk-off kick. And he talked about how it was all kind of put in perspective for him, like that there's a lot more important things in life than just making or missing field goals or whatever. And I think as people who follow this sport, follow this team, watch this game, avidly as we do, it's important to remember those things as well. Like, as much as people are upset that their team's kicker can't make a field dealing with. So for him to kind of overcome that and the emotions of that, and for him to, realize, keep in perspective what he does for a living. And he said week 1, it can be the lowest of lows when you're dealing with something of that magnitude and you miss kicks and you feel like you let your team down, and it can sort of snowball. But he was able to clear his head. He was able to come out and have a good week last week. He had an even better week this week, and he's back on track. It just adds another layer to what is an incredible redemption story here early in the season from being, tossed out with the bathwater by a lot of this fan base. And again, in some of us talking heads like myself, to then bouncing back that way, understanding that he was dealing with something immense that was weighing on him emotionally behind the scenes. Just remarkable. Again, these are the things and the stories and the reasons that sports become so compelling. Like, yes, it's the drama of the game. It's how things played out yesterday. It's like anything can happen. The Browns, by the way, are now one of 6 teams since 2000 to win a game after being held scoreless for the first until the 3:46 mark of the fourth quarter. Teams that have been in games that's been the case, by the way, since 2000. The record are 6-223 for teams that were held or shut out up until 3:46 remaining in the fourth quarter. And the Browns became one of those 6 teams yesterday. Like, yes, it's those stories, it's those stats, it's those remarkable feats where it's like, this team, there's no way this team's going to win. And somehow they pull a rabbit out of a hat and get the job done. It's the walk-off, game-winning moments like we saw from Andre Schmidt himself and all that. But it's also the stories of the players themselves. And to have a redemption story that was also intertwined with this tragic loss that he was dealing with and the emotions of that just adds to how remarkable yesterday was and how special it was for him as a whole. And it meant even more than any of us even realized, and especially as any more than the fan base realized. And I think that certainly fans are now rallying around Andre Schmidt, which is obviously cool to see and rightfully so. Hopefully he can be the kicker now moving forward for this team. That kick yesterday was a step in the right direction. And man, like I was blown away by that story, and it's going to be a cool one to keep, to keep following and hearing from him on as the season progresses, because I can only imagine like what the weight of that would be as you're trying to also do a job that is extremely pressure packed each and every single week. And man, did he deliver yesterday. So adds another layer to a very cool moment and special moment. And I know Browns fans are still riding high after that one. I am excited to break down with you on Tuesday's show some tail of the tape with my guy Lance Reisland. Join me weekly to do these. He's got a couple things on defense he's gonna draw up on his computer. So we'll see what he's got for us, and we'll talk to him about some of the coaching decisions made in game and different things like that, and how this win maybe can spiral into several more for the Browns and how momentum sort of works in this sport. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make Locked On Browns, or if you're looking forward to hearing from Lance tomorrow, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel for your second listen. You can get a double dose of Locked On NFL with Tyler, the Madman Rowland, giving you a shot of espresso to start your football day. And then Tony Wiggins rounding it out with the barbershop, where he's got some of the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. You can find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Or as always, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being here every day at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.